So for this bell work today, we are looking at absolute value. Now, the tricky part about this one, I don't know if it's tricky or not. If you remember your absolute value, it's pretty straightforward. But we treat our absolute value kind of like parentheses. And what that means is if we've got the lines right there, we can treat that kind of like, oh, I'm not writing yet. We can basically think of those kind of like parentheses. Now, they serve a different function, but what we've got is I'm going to evaluate what's inside the absolute value first. So my next step after I do -6 plus 8 is going to be -3 and then 2 inside the absolute value, and that equals something. Now, the default operation in algebra is multiplication, which means if we have two things next to each other and there's no operation indicated, then that means we're multiplying. So this is essentially the same as -3 times the absolute value of 2. And the absolute value of 2 is just 2. Remember, absolute value means if it's negative, it's still, you turn it positive. It's the distance away from 0. Okay, so in this case, it's -3 times 2. And this is supposed to confuse you a little bit because the absolute value, some people will make the mistake of turning it into a -2 as a result. But of course, we know better. So this will just multiply to -6. So there's your answer. It was B, or G in this case. All right, so this today, actually these word problems are a little bit easier because they already set it up for you. So in a sense, we're kind of going backwards a little bit and we're letting the diagrams be drawn for you, but you need to know how to do this. So this might be good practice for you to see if you haven't done yesterday's homework. You can go through, look at this, and then that can help you solve everything. There was one problem I wanted to focus in on, which is this one right here, a lighthouse operator. This is actually the inverse of a problem that I asked you the other day when we were talking about, is one of these. Yeah, when we were looking at regular trigonometry. So we had a scenario where we were out on a boat at sea, we're looking up at the light of a lighthouse, and we were trying to figure out the angle. So we were trying to figure out the height of the lighthouse. No, how far we were from ocean. I'm sorry, there we are. So now, what we have, the reason I wanted to look at this is because we have what's called an angle of depression. Yesterday we talked about this a little bit, where if you're looking out straight ahead, you can look up, and that's an angle of elevation. You could also look down, angle of depression, okay? And the idea is that if you're standing up, I'm not writing yet, if you're standing up at the top of this lighthouse, your 0 degrees is looking straight out toward the horizon, okay? So there's 0 degrees. But now I'm gonna measure 12 degrees down. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is the most common problem, the most common type of problem where people will make a consistent mistake. Now, I'll also tell you, I'm not gonna put this on the test, but it's worth looking at right now. Because an angle of depression is down from the horizon. And what a lot of people read, imagine you don't have this diagram right here. And it just gives you the words. What a lot of people will do is they'll say, oh, okay, I know how to model this. It's a right triangle. And an angle of depression, that means this is 12 degrees. And what we need to realize, of course, is that the 12 degrees is not this angle. Instead, it's imagining that there's a perfect horizon right here. It's 12 degrees down there. There's your 12 degrees. So this causes a lot of confusion, and you can imagine why. Okay. So just remember, your angle of elevation and depression are always measured from the horizon up or down. Go ahead.
So 12 would be your hypotenuse?
It's the 12 degrees is talking about this angle right here specifically. So that the hypotenuse is going to be a certain length, x. So x feet or meters or whatever you want to measure it in. So the 12 degrees is not referring to the length of anything. It's just the angle from the horizon down.
So how would you find your 2 points?
There you go. That's a good question. Now we can look at it this way. Let me just clear this real quick. This is where it's going to come back to some other geometry content that we learned. All right, so if I have a horizon right here and I have the land, well, in this case, the sea, but if I have those two lines right there, what can we say about those two lines? Not perpendicular, but
Parallel.
There you go, parallel. So these two lines are parallel. And that means if this is parallel and this line of sight is like a transversal cutting through it, here's your 12 degrees. What's that angle going to be? 12. An angle of elevation is going to be the same as an angle of depression. What did I just say? An angle of elevation and depression will be the same for two observers. Okay. So if it's 12 there, it's going to be 12 here. And that's how we would approach this problem. And like I said, this one causes so many issues. I want you guys to be exposed to it and to see it. But as far as the quiz goes, I will probably not put this on the quiz. Okay. But anyways, from here, I'm not going to do the rest of the problem. They're asking for the height of the lighthouse. You guys can figure that out based on this new triangle that we've created. So with that, I will let you guys go to Canvas, get this worksheet. Some of these are going to require you thinking back to some other content you've learned in geometry. So if you have any questions, then let me know. I would also encourage you guys to do the entire worksheet. You don't have to turn in the entire thing, but if you do the entire worksheet and you can get it and you feel like you've got it mastered, you are really good to go for the test, which won't be until next week. Yeah.
So which problems do we need?
In Canvas it says, but I'll tell you it's problem A, C, E, and then G, and then these two right here, there's 3A and B, and then 5A. So it's basically every other problem, but I have it mentioned in the Canvas assignment. Good question. All right, with that, have yourself a wonderful day. You can log off if you're good to go, and I will see you next week. Stick around if you have any questions.